Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School.
Ho, ho, ho. This week we're going to do that one scene from 1987 Stanley Kubrick film, Full Metal Jacket.
Get up! Get on your feet! All right, everybody, I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see /here, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people find good media. We do one-on-ones, festivals, every other week. We do that one scene.
That's right.
Tell us what this one scene is.
The opening scene of Full Metal Jacket. We get the drill sergeant, Sergeant Hartman, senior drill instructor, Emery, right?
Lee Emery, yep.
Lee Emery, sorry.
Yep.
His shining moment. And,
oh, my God.
And, yeah, just, you know, obviously we also get some Kubrick here.
Oh, definitely.
Here, and it's, I mean, man, I forget how good this movie is.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to keep watching, but I didn't have time to, but I will at a later date.
Yeah, this kind of, this combination of in-your-face stylistic elements mixed with these big, wide, floaty camera elements. It's kind of, again, like I was saying, if you could cut out Lee Emery and just have the camera moving through that room and put like some wah wah, it's The Shining, right? It's like as we move past these pillars,
I absolutely
like,
thought that.
and he just slides across through these rooms in this way that's like, it still is just unlike anything that any other director has ever done.
It truly is. No, and you're absolutely right. The shot, he's a master of shot creation. Even the haircut scene at the beginning, like, it's genius. Like, you're literally like seeing like, it's the editing's excellent in this scene too, because they're cutting like when all the hair's like kind of halfway gone, so you kind of only see a slight glimpse of who these people used to be.
Yep.
But every cut is with it some part shaved off already. So and you're literally seeing them like their selves like fall to the ground.
Yep.
And they're these fresh-faced maggots.
Yeah.
And everyone's got a shaved head. You know, your basic training in the core.
Yep.
My beloved core.
Yeah.
Man, is this scene intense. And, we referenced this scene when we did Whiplash. We did the opening scene of Whiplash. I think there's very, very similarities, a lot of similarities. I think there's, a lot of people give this, I don't know if the criticism is fair or not, that this is, they don't like this movie because it's kind of two different movies, which it is. And I guess there's some validity to that because I could just watch the boot camp stuff for the whole movie. It's very intriguing, especially the way he made it. Yeah. And the character development to just end it where they do. Obviously they jump ahead a bit into the war itself and that kind of stuff. But I love both sections. Absolutely amazing stuff. But,
Yeah, and I understand that. And I think for a long time I felt that way. I mean, in our Wong Kar-wai festival, I made the same comment that I felt about Chungking Express of it being two very different stories.
Three.
But I do, three. But I do think that and I thought about that while watching this scene. And I think what makes this work is that the first part of the story really feels done. It really feels like it's finished all the things it had to say. And then we wake up in Vietnam. You know what I mean? I think that it makes sense that it does it that way.
There's closure, I think. And then we're still with the same people. We just jump ahead.
Right.
And that's the way that this first section ends is pretty heavy.
Well, and I think it's, if at the end of it, what Kubrick was trying to get out of it, which is what he said was, I want people to understand what this would be like. I want them to understand what this would actually feel like. And I think it does that. I think that this first part with the drill sergeant and with Pyle played incredibly here by Vincent D'Onofrio. Super young Vincent D'Onofrio.
He's got that look on his face. Even when they're cutting his hair at the beginning, he's just got this like dead look in his eye.
Yeah, he's just kind of, and he goes from being dopey, dead-eyed to being psychotic, dead-eyed, and I think that it's a really, when we first, obviously this sequence that we're talking about when we get into Arlie Emery's performance, a lot of it is just allowing the drill sergeant to chew the scenery and give you an idea of what it must be like to be here. But the other thing that's happening that I think is really interesting is Kubrick is working kind of under the surface to give us the idea that these kids have no idea what they're actually up against. Like they don't. I think they still have some feeling of comfort.
It's like a scared straight thing, right?
Yeah, well, I think that they still have some feeling of comfort that someone's going to swoop in and save them, and that is not the case at all. Less so with Joker, Matthew Modine's character, although that is there a little bit when he does his John Wayne. Is that John Wayne? Is this me?
Oh, man.
And he does that, and you're like, oh my God, why would you do that? Oh my God, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know, and he thinks that there still is going to be some levity that's given to him.
Nope.
No, not at all. But with Pyle's character, it's like it's done so well, and D'Onofrio does such an amazing job of that smirk. I'm sorry, sir. I'm trying. I can't stop smiling. And you're like, oh, you poor fucking idiot. You poor moron. You have no idea how bad it's going to get for you. You know, and to think that like that's not normally a perspective, especially, you know, if you think about during this period of time when this movie came out. I mean, we were rife with Vietnam stories, right?
Sure.
So you had your Platoon. On TV, you had, what was it, Tour of Duty? Wasn't that the name of the show that like had the...
I think so.
Yeah, and I think they were set in Saigon or something. But it was like, there was so much Vietnam media that was like fictional Vietnam media that was happening. But it was all about, oh, these kids are way out of their depth, and they're in the jungles of Vietnam. And to hear to be like, no, we haven't even got there, right? We're still on the island. Like we haven't even left the U.S. And this is how bad it's going to be, is that these kids don't realize they're going to get chewed up by this machine.
Yeah.
And they do such a great job of playing those characters.
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like an anti-recruitment video, you know?
Oh, it definitely is. Yeah.
If you're talking about the scared straight and, you know, the first time you see this, you know, and I'm curious to hear your point of view about this, because it's a weird balance, because, you know, the first time I saw this movie, you know, I can't remember how old I was, but, you know, I mean, although he is like absolutely berating and belittling and saying awful shit throughout this whole thing, it's also really fucking funny.
It's very, very funny.
And I'm wondering, like, you know, how can things be both brutal and hilarious?
And I think that's the master stroke of having Emery as the character, because you know, he was a consultant and was a consultant on a lot of things.
Sure.
Before this,
made a career out of being this guy.
Well, and he played a Army helicopter pilot in Apocalypse Now. He has like a blink and you'll miss it, I think, in that. And that was his first role, again, because he was there as a consultant, and they were like, hey, you're great, and they had him do it. And he was only supposed to be a consultant on Full Metal Jacket, but he kept explaining how they were going to do it. He did one other movie, I can't think of what it was, a couple years before this, and Kubrick had seen it and was like, no, you're too nice in that. I'm looking for somebody that's way worse. And so Emery just pulled out all of his memory of all the shit that he had said over the years, like the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And then he tried it out on the actors, and Kubrick watched that and was like, okay, you got the gig. But I think he purposely was like, that's beyond what we would normally do. Like we would maybe pull some of that stuff out when we needed to. For
sure.
But I mean, when you talk about your first time seeing it, my first time seeing it, I was way too young. I think I was 13, maybe.
Wow, that is young to
and
see.
I remembered thinking, if they ever bring back the draft, I'll run over my foot with a lawnmower. I literally remember having that thought, and not because of the whole movie. Like the second half of the movie was kind of like, it seemed more boring to me. But the first part of the movie, this whole boot camp section was scarier than any horror movie I had seen today. You know what I mean? Where I was just like, this mindless machine of the government could just scoop you up and be like, sorry, this is what you're going to do now, and feed you to the wolves. And so, like, I remember it scaring the shit out of me. Now that I'm older, I get I like all the jokes. Like, it's so memorable. It is so endlessly quotable.
Oh, man.
The god awful shit that he says.
Yeah.
And he contradicts himself over and over again, right? He talks about how it doesn't matter your race, color, or creed, and then immediately jumps into the worst
racial slur
that you've ever heard.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the emotional and physical damage of soldiers is absolutely real, right? And I doubt things are like this on a day-to-day basis, especially now. But maybe back in Vietnam, yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, well, but are they any better than Jack Nicholson's character in A Few Good Men?
No, yeah. I mean,
because that still has people killing themselves, you know, in that movie.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, most of us probably have some type of soldiers in our lives, you know, and they risk their lives for their countries to do this. To do this, and but how many of them come back the same way? None of them. They're all changed, and you know that a lot of times isn't a good thing because of the shit you see, right? And so, starting off with this brutality and this emotional and physical abuse that's going on, you know, it's hard to have your wrap your head around. But I'm sure anyone who has a soldier in their life, they probably don't. They're not the same person they were when they left.
Well, and according to this sequence that we're talking about, the dehumanization is the point, right? The dehumanization is the goal. And you know, this very first thing that he says, which, you know, is I mean, one thing I was just going to say is like this movie, this whole opening sequence has been sampled to death.
Oh yeah.
My favorite is the Bremen extreme metal band Acme does the "If You Ladies Leave My Island," right? Like that's the beginning of the record before this like brutal metal music comes on. But you know, that very first thing he says there is "You'll be a minister of death," right? And it's almost like we will strip away your identity, your sense of self, your personality, and all will be left is that you'll be this killing machine. And I agree. I doubt that that's exactly the way that it is nowadays, but I can also see that
how that would fuck people up.
Well, and also how that would be a benefit to the military to have people whose identities have been stripped away that are just killing machines.
You're the lowest form of life on Earth. You're not even human fucking beings.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like him,
exactly,
you know, the dehumanization of everything. He's like, I don't care your race, color, creed, like you said, and
you're mine
because
now.
You're all the lowest forms of life right now.
Yep, it's nuts, man.
It's brutal and it's cringy, you know, but it's realistic for sure, and pretty wild to think about that. So, do you have a favorite insult?
I think it's because I've always been able to picture it, like I can picture it in my head. Is you look like you could suck a golf ball through a garden hose. And keep in mind that this is also you know, again, you sampled famously the band Revolting Cocks with Beer Steers and Queers. Sample that sequence and all of the other ones about being from Texas in that industrial metal song. And then also Ministry, the industrial metal band, also Al Jorgensen uses the "Get Up and Get on Your Feet" in Thieves.
You're right, it's been sampled to death for sure.
But I think golf ball through a garden hose, that's
nice. Mine has to be the one after the John Wayne impression, where he's like, "Who the fuck said that? Who's the?" I have it written down here. Who's the slimy little communist shit twinkle toed cocksucker down here who just signed his own death warrant? Hell, I like you. You can come home and.
Yeah, you can come over and fuck my sister. What is it? It's twinkle toed. Do it again.
Slimy little communist shit twinkle toed cocksucker.
Amazing. So apparently, while Emery was practicing his lines in the rehearsal room, Kubrick's assistant Leon Vitali would throw tennis balls and oranges at him, which Emery had to catch and throw back as quickly as possible while saying his lines as fast as he could. Any hesitation, slip, or missed line would necessitate starting over. 20 error-free runs were required before he went and recorded it. And then when he recorded it, keep in mind this is Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah,
they only did it 3 times.
Wow.
And Kubrick was like, because he did it right.
Well, and he famously has a lot of takes too.
This is what I'm saying. I mean, he fucking broke Shelley Duvall. He broke Shelley Duvall's brain. So I mean, yeah, he's known for doing that. But with Emery, he was like, nope, that was good. 3 takes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a hell of a scene.
You know, it is a hell of a scene. You know, you got the let me see your war face. All that stuff is great. But honestly, it all comes down to Leonard Lawrence, right? Private Pile.
Yep.
You know, his emotional breakage and his like underlying problems get brought to the surface. You know, it's obviously in this first half, and you know, by the end of it, he is a different person, like we were talking about earlier. You know.
Yeah.
But that fucking smirk, he can't not do that smirk,
and he just doesn't know, and
he doesn't know how to choke himself.
Again, what a testament. Well, I'll talk about that in a second, but what a testament again to D'Onofrio. Obviously, you know, it's no news flash that Vincent D'Onofrio is a great actor.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
But I think more often than not, he plays really intimidating heavies, and here he is playing. I mean, obviously he becomes psychotic later on, but he's playing this naive character, and he does such a good job of doing that. And it's like so against type for what he would do for the majority of his career.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting to see like, oh, he's playing this super naive, innocent kid.
No, that's a good point.
It's just not something you ever really see him do.
And this is what he became famous from.
Here's my question. Did he do the choke yourself thing because it wouldn't be legal for him to actually put his hand on his neck and do that?
I don't think he cares about what's legal.
But I wonder if it is, because it's such a weird workaround to like, my hand's already here doing this, and you put your neck in it. I wonder if there was like...
I don't know. I'm not sure that
I don't know either, but that's the only thing that made any sense to me.
Yeah.
As to why it might be, because I'm sure that wasn't a thing Kubrick came up with. I'm sure that's a thing Emery said, but here's what we would do.
It's an authority thing, because he tried to grab his arm. He's like, don't fucking touch me.
Fucking
like, you know,
touch
like,
me.
so he wants him to, like, you know, he wants it. And obviously he's choking him so he'll stop smiling.
Yeah.
And it works.
It totally works. But I'm just curious if there is like a, look, you can do this, but you can't do that to the grunts. Like,
I'm guessing it probably doesn't matter.
You're probably right.
But wow, what a powerful scene.
Definitely.
And honestly, you talked about it at the beginning, but chef's kiss to the fucking cinematography here. It's so good. You have these dolly shots, you have these front facing shots, you have the angled shots when he's down on the ground
looking up.
You know, that is a classic film school thing to make a person more intimidating or be the villain.
There's an identical one in The Shining.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right underneath the refrigerator door, looking up.
And then you have the pans, everything.
Yeah.
And it's and again, honestly, the haircut scene is masterful.
Yeah.
If you watch it, because you know they have this great country song playing.
Well, I love what you're saying about their identities are already partially gone, because I remembered thinking that it's like, oh yeah, whoever they were before they've walked through the door and they belong to the government is being stripped away. And it's a really great observation.
Yeah, and you know, it's just a fucking camera on a tripod.
Yeah.
And everyone just sits down and gets their haircut and they film it, and it's just there's so much visualization with that opening scene, and then you jump right into this and you're like, holy shit, this movie's crazy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get less crazy.
No, it doesn't. It's a roller coaster.
Love it though. Great. Probably top 3 Kubrick movie, you think?
I think so.
I don't know. I guess if you don't like the second half as much, then maybe it's lower on the list. But man, I mean,
the second half is really good, but I don't know that it can hold a candle to the first half.
The first half is something special.
Yeah.
And like I said, I could watch that whole movie too. So he should have just done like a 2-parter. Just do that and then do the war movie.
Or just have the beat. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I could have handled 2 hours of that though.
That's a good point.
Of the drill sergeant, like
there'd have to be
because it feels like a whole
camaraderie.
Yeah, because it feels like a whole movie, just to that end. Mm-hmm. Like when you're like, oh, now we're in Vietnam and they're talking about fucky sucky, you're like, oh, thank God. You know what I mean?
Finally, I could breathe.
Yeah, like this is so much less terrifying now that we're finally in the war.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching and playing along with us. Hopefully you do. We're going to begin a new festival next week It is a new stand-up comedy festival. Movies about stand-up comedy. We're going to start with Sleepwalk with Me from Mike Birbiglia.
Yeah.
So please join us, like and subscribe. Our most active channels are Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So make sure to go to those and give us some love. And we're going to start a new short form thing here pretty soon, and I think you all will enjoy it. It's
going to be great.
It's worth a follow. So I'm excited to show everyone that and get that going. But thank you all, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.